Your thoughts on the closing pitch here for the Trump campaign from Vivek Ramaswamy?
It's a really interesting one. He's also obviously pitching himself a little forward as a possible cabinet member because he reached the generation that he fears Trump isn't reaching.
Yeah.
But it is, it is sort of saying a lot of the things that Donald Trump tries to say and sometimes gets wrapped up in his grievances and sort of doesn't get to. But the idea that, well, as Vivek Ramaswamy puts it, that, this idea of the cancel culture and woke capitalism, as he's written about, is what I think he's referring to when he talks about the need for free speech.
Okay.
But I'm guessing as well as anyone else.
Sure.
But it's an interesting surrogate pitch for the last few moments of the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what I wonder how much the last few moments, even the last few days, Mario, have ultimately mattered when you had Trump decisively win in Iowa. You had every other contender that wasn't Nikki Haley dropping out and now endorsing him in the case of not just Vivek, but Ron DeSantis as well. And typically when you've seen upsets in New Hampshire, polling suggests that the candidate that upsets is getting more and more support leading up to it. It's going the opposite direction for Nikki Haley. So if anyone's closing argument's working, maybe it's just not hers.
Yeah, well, what we've heard from some of the folks that we've hosted, even here in this space, is the fact that undecided voters, that 40% of the electorate here in New Hampshire, they need something to stir that angst, right, to drive them to the polls to vote against Donald Trump. That's Nikki Haley's, that's the predicate for her campaign here in New Hampshire. And from what we've seen so far on the ground here, she hasn't quite done that. You've seen in the last 48 hours or so that she's ratcheted up her attacks. She's started to attack Donald Trump along the lines of mental acuity, but one has to wonder if that's too little too late.
Yeah. We've been trying to paint the picture for everyone of what's really going on here in Manchester, the different kind of feel that there is in the air this time. It's been very quiet. You might say a low-energy primary without the normal fanfare, but happening here, and we're set up in a hotel on Elm Street that's kind of the central location for media activity. And right around lunchtime today, every surrogate for Donald Trump showed up at the same time in this hotel.
It was amazing.
And conducted a flurry of interviews. That includes Senator Tim Scott, his own son, Eric Trump, others, including Vivek Ramaswamy, who we spoke with earlier. Where are all of Nikki Haley's surrogates?
Perhaps they're at another hotel.
This is part of the story, isn't it?
It is part of the story, although I will say that while that reflects a very organized effort on the part of Donald Trump, Trump's campaign, we have talked to dozens of voters today at different polling places all across the state, and I am seeing quite a bit of enthusiasm for Nikki Haley. There's a lot of Democrats and independents who say they're crossing over. There are a number of Republicans who say, I liked him in 2016, I got tired of him in 2020, and I don't want to see him in 2024. Yeah. But it's just whether or not that's enough. But the Haley voters do seem more enthusiastic here than they did in Iowa, where it was a very Trump-friendly state. And Nikki Haley's been working the voters here very, very hard. And I think those who show up to vote for her, whether it's to stop Trump or to put her in the nomination, are excited about it.
Well, one of the things Nikki Haley has been pitching herself on is her foreign policy experience, given that she was the former ambassador to the United Nations and given all that's happening in the world. I mean, Mario, a headline just crossing the Bloomberg terminal, the U.S. and allies conducted now an 8th strike on Houthi targets in Yemen, designed to degrade, according to our reporting, Houthi capabilities. The thing is, all of that might be true. There might be a hot conflict in the Middle East, hot conflict in Europe with Ukraine and Russia. But is foreign policy what matters to voters in New Hampshire, to voters anywhere, frankly, in the country right now?
Foreign policy does matter, right? Because Nikki Haley, her ascent, really, there's a correlation between her ascent and some of the global conflicts that continue to deepen, right, last fall. Now, how foreign policy matters is the fact that the subtext of Donald Trump's Make America Great Again is the world is a scary place. These are all the things that are happening out here, and I'm the one that can solve it. And so that's what you're seeing from some of these voters, that when you speak to them, they have this sepia view of Donald Trump, this nostalgia, where they feel as though we weren't ensnared in so many foreign conflicts.